Welcome to the Voice of Reason, Carolina charm with California wit. Whether it's the law, politics, relationships, or recipes for the kitchen, the Voice of Reason is online and in all our hearts. Now, please welcome the Voice of Reason, Mr. Ted Durden.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Voice of Reason. So what I want you folks to do tonight, get your favorite libation, kick off your heels, kick off your shoes, take a seat, relax, because we're going to jump into quite a few things this evening. So first thing on the menu is we're going to be talking about Kavanaugh. Then we're going to get into Manafort. Then we're going to be talking about women and cheap dates. And then finally, we're going to close with one of my favorite recipes, barbecued shrimp. Because let me tell you something, that's some good eating right there. So let's talk about Kavanaugh that's been all over the news lately. Everybody is familiar with the fact that he's been accused by Christine Ford of sexual assault 36 years ago when he was 17 years old and drunk at a party. There are several schools of thought on it. Of course, from the Republican side, they don't believe that it happened. From the Democrat side, they believe that it did. And everybody is drawing their lines in the sand. I'm going to quote from Maya Angelou, Nobel Poet Laureate. And what she said is, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So here we have this Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, who has been accused of sexually assaulting Christine Ford 17 years ago. Now, the concern about him being appointed to the Supreme Court is that, in my opinion, you will then have two sexual predators sitting on the highest court in the land. And, of course, the very first one being Clarence Thomas. If you were alive during that time, I'd have been young, that he was accused by Anita Hill of sexual harassment that happened over a period of 1 decade. He stood up, he defended himself. She was excoriated. Nobody believed her. She was taken to task. She was shamed. She was attacked. And Clarence was confirmed. I think that's probably the first time in over 100 years that a Supreme Court nominee or the Supreme Court had been tainted in such a way. I don't think he should have made it. The Republicans cast it as bringing another black man onto the Supreme Court after Thurgood Marshall retired. But he was nowhere near a Thurgood Marshall. And I don't think that Brett Kavanaugh should be should be appointed to the Supreme Court. Now, there's another quote that comes from Brian Stevenson. And what that quote says is, each of us is greater than the worst thing we've ever done. If you lied once, that doesn't make you a liar. If you've killed once, that does not make you a lifetime murderer. And I can understand there may be some truth to that. But my concern about Brett Kavanaugh is that he has a propensity of committing such a crime. And the fact that he has a propensity for doing it once, in my opinion, he has a propensity for doing it again. Because if any of you were listening on the prior show that I'm also on with Steve, Mike, and Robert on War Comp Matters, we had a very, very animated discussion about this very subject. Because this is a man who's going to be making a decision that affects all of our lives, all of us. And I don't think I want to have another sexual predator sitting on the Supreme Court making decisions about my life. I don't. Now, when you take a look at it in its totality, and Brett Kavanaugh has denied all of the allegations, Christine Ford has indicated that she would be willing to testify. Now, she said she would only do that after the FBI conducted an investigation. And I think that's very smart on her part, because she might be old enough to have witnessed what Anita Hill went through. And I'm sure she's saying to herself, I certainly don't want to put myself through what she did. So what I'm going to have somebody else do, have the FBI investigate it, vet everything out. Because if the FBI makes a determination that her story is true, that there is some supporting evidence or witnesses or whoever else might have been there, at the party at the time this happened, then that would make it easier for the panel to give Kavanaugh a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Now, of course, on the Republican side, they see that as a delay tactic in the sense that, well, if you do an FBI investigation, then that's going to delay the process, which if, as the Democrats think is going to happen, there's going to be a blue wave in November, then Brett Kavanaugh will never be confirmed. And I think as long as these allegations are hanging over his head, that he shouldn't be. Because I can't think of anybody that's being accused of such a crime readily steps forth and admits it, and especially when there is so much on the line. So the fact that he categorically denies everything doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. So I can't wait to hear what Miss Christine Ford has to say whenever it happens, be it next week or a month down the line. I just think that Brett Kavanaugh should answer for the allegations. And the only thing that's fortunate for him, because the statute of limitations have run, if he was in Pennsylvania and in any of those that followed the Bill Cosby trial, there was no statute of limitations on sexual assault in Pennsylvania. And that's why he was prosecuted there. So Brett better be glad that this did not come out in Pennsylvania, or his ass would be on the line right now, possibly arrested and in jail. But I digress. Let's move on to Manafort. Again, Trump is the gift that just keeps on giving. He thought that he had dodged a bullet with Manafort. He was touting Manafort's bravery for not succumbing to all the efforts that Mueller was making, trying to get him to take a plea deal. He didn't want to do it. He turned him down at every turn. And I think that's because of the fact that Manafort never expected to be found guilty. And I don't know if you listeners were aware of this or how closely you follow the news, but there was one juror holdout. All of the other jurors had voted to convict Manafort on all 18 charges. This one holdout is what resulted him being found guilty on only 8 charges. And now that he has reached a plea deal, part of his plea deal was that he would acquiesce to all 18 charges that were brought against him. Now, the one thing that Mueller's team has done that has a lot of lawyers a little rankled is the plea deal. Because the way the plea deal has been set up and orchestrated, it would make it almost impossible for Manafort to accept a pardon should Trump try to give him one. Now, Giuliani has come out and he has indicated to Trump not to pardon Manafort, especially when you take a look at all the crimes that he has been willfully engaging in, all the fraud that he's done. So what Mueller did is that there is language in the agreement that if Manafort does get a pardon, then he's going to still have to surrender property that's worth tens of millions of dollars to the feds. And I think we all know that is something that Manafort does not want to do. He doesn't want to give up the luxurious lifestyle that he's put together through ill-gotten gains if he can hold on to it. And so the long-term repercussions of that could be what's going to happen next, because he has agreed to talk to Mueller about everything and that he would testify about everything that he knew that was going on within the confines of the Trump campaign. Now, I still don't believe there's going to be enough information there to bring Donald Trump down, but it's kind of interesting when you look at it. You're innocent, but everybody around you is guilty. And I don't care how you look at it, it just does not look good. And most lawyers out there, the biggest problem that they have with it is because of the way that the plea deal was arranged between Mueller and Manafort, that it takes into consideration future events, which nobody can predict. And the way that Mueller did it was very shrewd. A lot of attorneys out there are rankled by it because they think that he's gone beyond the pale in making this agreement with Mueller. He really boxed him in. And in essence, he has, in a way, taken away Trump's ability to exercise his constitutional right to pardon somebody. He has made it so that if Manafort accepted it, he would suffer seriously for it. That's exactly what would happen. Now, the next thing that's on the menu that I have this evening is cheap dates. I'm not a fan of cheap dates. I never have been. What amazes me, though, is the fact that there are a lot of women out there, age group varying from as young as their mid-20s to as old as their mid to late 50s. And they're willing to go out on dates with men, and the man has a coupon. I don't get that. I don't get that. I'm an old school Renaissance man. I am. And I think that women should be treated in a certain way. And to me, in my opinion, I don't know why this has become such a trend. And what I find interesting, and if I can go off tangent for a little bit, is the fact that they seem to try to excuse or justify what the man is doing. They want to say, well, I have to admire him because he's being frugal. No, he's being cheap. That means he has a good business sense. No, he's being cheap. That shows that he's really into trying to save money. No, he's being cheap. Because what happens is you set a dangerous precedent. And that is, if you allow the man to take you on a cheap date once or to be cheap with you all the time, then that's all he's going to do. Now, he's not going to be cheap on him. He's going to be cheap on you. And you're going to be okay with that. So if he's going to be cheap with the food, trust me, he's going to be cheap with other things. He might go out when it's time, like you guys, the relationship may be getting more serious, and he wants to get a ring for you. You're looking for a diamond ring. He's, oh, no. It's not a diamond. It's white sapphire. Or it's cubic zirconium. Nobody can tell the difference when they look at it. Ain't nobody going to know but you and me, baby. Ain't nobody going to know but you and me. So it's going to be all right. But, I saved a couple $1,000s on this. And, of course, the question in your mind is, well, damn, I thought I was at least worth that. Well, the problem is, my mother used to tell me, you teach people how to treat you. So if you start off with this man treating you cheaply, then he's going to treat you cheaply. See, if you want to beat a brass ring, well, beat a brass ring. Be worth it. Let that man see your worth and don't settle for anything less than what you deserve. Now, that doesn't mean that the man, unless you've been in a long-term relationship, that doesn't mean that you go out to dinner, especially the first time, he's going to drop some serious coin on you, like $200 or $300. It does not necessarily mean that. But if he takes you to a restaurant and say, yeah, baby, we're going to go here. The meal is normally $100, but I got this coupon. We're going to get it for $30. I don't know. That would just leave a sour taste in my mouth. Because I remember that there was a friend of mine, she got invited to go to Hollywood Park. And she was all excited. She got all dressed up because the man said, yeah, we're going to go to Hollywood Park and we're going to have dinner. So she's thinking, wow, I'm going to the racetrack, we're going to have a good time, have some drinks, so forth and so on. We're going to do it up. Yeah, she went to the racetrack, had a great time. She said, okay, we're going to have for dinner. girl, they sell $1 hot dogs right here. She's like, that's dinner? Yeah, that's dinner. Yeah, we over here in Hollywood Park, we having a good time. We can have like 3, 4, 5, 6 hot dogs. You get as many as you want. They only $1 each. My treat. How about that? How about that? It sets a very dangerous precedent. My niece went out with a man. Nice restaurant. Had a great meal. She jokingly said, when the check came, do you want to split it? Do you know that man whipped out a calculator and started splitting it down the middle? Even the tip. You teach a man how to treat you. You can't look at a man, let him take you on a cheap date. And I'm not talking about when you meet somebody for the first time. You might want to go grab coffee or something like that. Although, personally, I'm not a big fan of that either. That's just me. Okay, because see, when I take a woman out for the first time, I want to put my best foot forward. Because it's like the old saying goes, you have only one chance to make a great first impression. And I do not want your first impression to me to be a cup of Java at Starbucks, made with some whipped cream or some foam on top, maybe a cappuccino or something like that. I don't want that. I want to take you out to dinner where they have linen napkins, impeccable service, a great wine list, a great cocktail list, a fantastic dessert, and entrees to die for. So you just can't let that man just take you anywhere because he doesn't think that you're worth spending the money on you. I don't get that. And yet women out there every day allow that to happen and then wonder why they're treated the way that they are. Well, it begins with you because, hey, I'm a man. We gonna get away with whatever you let us get away with. So if you only expect the minimum from us, baby, that's all you gonna get. You gonna get the bare minimum. There's like another friend of mine. He went out and spent back in the day, a lot of money, may not be so much now. He spent over $1,000 for a stereo system. And he was a garbage man. That's all cool. When his wife said that she wanted a new stereo for her car, you know what he did? He came home with a radio that he found in the trash. Because again, that's how he treated her all their life. He gave her the cheapest thing possible. And so I don't know why she was surprised by that, and she's stuck there. Anyway, enough about that. Cheap dates, can't stand them. Why you women put up with them, I don't even know. I don't get it. I plead ignorance to that. You need to want better, do better, get better. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, so I'll be back, and then we'll move into one of my absolute favorite parts of the program.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Ted Durden, brought to you by Turchin Law, 818-230-3110. If you need any assistance with employment, labor, or workers' compensation law, call Turchin Law, 818-230-3110. And if you like The Voice of Reason, please subscribe and tell a friend. Now we go back to The Voice of Reason with host Ted Durden.
Okay, now let's jump off into this. Okay, so as I described on the inaugural show, I'm a foodie, love to cook, big fan of chicken, steak, and seafood. So today, and probably over the next couple of podcasts that I do, I'm going to give some seafood recipes because I love it. Shrimp, lobster, my two absolute favorites. So one of my favorite dishes that I enjoy making is barbecued shrimp with smoky coleslaw. Now, one question that I did get after the first inaugural program, someone asked me, Ted, look, I heard the lamb recipe, sounded absolutely delicious, and my question to you is this. Are these meals for couples? Are they for families? I couldn't quite get a vibe for exactly, these meals that you're describing, exactly who or what are they for? The answer is very simple. Primarily, is for dinner parties, which would, you require a large quantity. However, I think they are absolutely beautifully designed for couples to have a romantic dinner by candlelight, some soft music in the background, no kids around. Send them to your grandma's house, your grandpa's house, your sister's house. I was going to say something, but somebody might accuse me of child abuse. I ain't going to say that, so I'll leave that part alone. But do something with them so you can have a quiet evening to yourself. Now, this recipe right here, barbecue shrimp with the smoky coleslaw, and let me tell you something. For the women, you prepare this for your man or your husband. There's an old saying, a man that eats well at home does not dine out. Man, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you're a man and you prepare this meal, I guarantee you, the woman that you have, she's not going nowhere. Because trust me, there's not a lot of men that can cook like this. So you would be a rare find, because you heard that old saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. It's no different for a woman. I've heard since time immemorial, there is nothing sexier than a man in the kitchen. Nothing. A woman loves to see that. A man in there cooking and preparing a meal exclusively for her, and especially if the atmosphere is set just right. So let's jump off into this. So first of all, let's start with one of the first things that you're going to need, and that's barbecue butter. Yes, I said barbecue butter. Now, this is nothing that you can go to the store. You can't go to Albertsons. You can't go to Vons. You can't go to A&P. You can't do that. This is something that you have to make. Now, this particular dish is a very savory dish, and I love savory. So the recipe calls for 1 stick of butter. I start with 1 stick, often end up with 2. Now, this particular recipe requires a pound of shrimp. Now, depending on how big your appetite is, or if you want to have some left over for later, using a pound of shrimp will make about 4 servings. So because a pound of medium-sized shrimp or large shrimp, that's going to get you between 16 and 20 shrimp. So again, depending on how hearty your appetite is, that would depend on how much you buy. So I'm going to give this recipe to you as it was originally intended, and that's going to be with a full pound. Because when I make it, I do the full pound because, hey, I love shrimp. So let's start with the ingredients. What you're going to get is, like I said, get butter, real butter, not that I can't believe it's butter or it's not butter, not margarine. I'm talking the real deal, Holyfield butter. You're going to need some black pepper. Now, you can get the kind that's in the McCormick's can. I like fresh pepper. So this requires only 2 teaspoons. And you're trying to say, well, if I use a pepper grinder, which is what I recommend, I'm only going to get that. And it's very easy. You simply grind it into the cap. That's all you do. Just simply grind it into the cap, and then you can measure out and you have yourself your fresh ground pepper. It's going to require some cayenne pepper, only half a teaspoon, 1.5 teaspoons of paprika, a teaspoon of kosher salt. Now, with some of the other dried ingredients, like rosemary. Now, rosemary, again, you can buy it pre-dried in a shaker bottle. I prefer to just cut mine up. So just get some rosemary leaves. It's very easy. Just chop it up real fine. You only need about half a teaspoon anyway, so it's not like it's going to take a lot. Then you'll also need 2 ounces of garlic. Well, see, I also love garlic. So I don't stop at just 2 ounces. I'll do about, maybe 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. And I chop that up real fine, because you were talking about a 1/4 cup. But I like a lot of garlic. Then you're going to need about 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of Tabasco, 1.5 teaspoons of water. Now, what you're going to do with all of that is you're going to take that up and you're going to put it in a bowl. All of those ingredients I just described. So you put it in the bowl and you whip it on high speed. Use a blender about maybe 3.5 minutes. Now, if you do this right, you should have about 2.5 cups of this concoction. Now, what you can do is take that and put that to the side and put it in the refrigerator. Just let it cool for a little bit. You're going to come back to that later. Now, the next thing we're going to do is a shrimp. Now, when you buy the shrimp, you want to make sure that the shrimp is completely deveined. And what I mean by that, I mean top and bottom. Most of the time you pick up a shrimp and it's deveined on the top, but the bottom vein isn't taken out. And I just have this thing about looking at shrimp with a black vein running through it. That just ain't my thing, so I cut it out. Just be careful with it not to split the shrimp in half. Now, the one thing you may be wondering, okay, I've got this shrimp, and you want to pull off everything except the tip of the tail. You want to leave that on. Now, I know once this dish is done, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get that tail off, but just leave it on, because what that does is it prevents the shrimp from curling totally up into a knot. So what you're going to do, once you devein the shrimp, and you're going to take it and put it in a pan. In that pan, you're going to have olive oil that's been heated up. So you're going to add the shrimp to the pan, cook it. It only takes about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. Now, once you do that, reduce the heat, and you're going to have chopped green onions, about 1/4 cup, more green than the white. So you put that in with the shrimp. You're going to use 1/2 cup of a dry wine. Now, my recommendation for that is Riesling. And the reason I say Riesling, because Riesling, as we all know, is a dessert wine, and it is very sweet. So you put that in, you cook it, you let it reduce. Once you cook the shrimp thoroughly and you sauteed it with the green onions and the Riesling wine, that's when you take out the barbecue butter and you put that in and you let that melt. And then you let that simmer and marinate. And it doesn't take that long. It only takes about 3 to 4 minutes, because the shrimp is already cooked. Because you don't want to overcook the shrimp. Because if you overcook the shrimp, then you're going to end up with rubbery shrimp, and that's no good to anybody. Now, the next thing that's going to be on the menu is going to be smoky coleslaw. Now, everybody knows how to do the coleslaw. You know, we all know that the basic ingredient is going to be cabbage. So you want to grab yourself 6 cups of shredded cabbage, and then get a cup of shredded carrots. And then you're going to put in 1/2 cup of sliced celery. This recipe calls for almonds, but if you have a nut allergy, leave them out. 1/2 cup of mayonnaise, tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, spicy brown mustard, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of smoked paprika, and 1/2 teaspoon of chipotle powder. Now, what you're going to do, the shredded carrots and the cabbage and the celery, you're going to have in a separate bowl. The other ingredients, you're going to mix together in a bowl. Now, once you've done that, you then take that and you pour this dressing over your coleslaw mix. Chill it, you serve it. So you got your smoky coleslaw, you got your barbecue shrimp, and to top this off, what you really need is some white rice to put that shrimp over. Now, when you're done with all of this, you're going to have some of that sauce left. And what you want to do is you want to put that in a gravy boat. You put that in a gravy boat because you want to save that extra sauce on the side to pour over the shrimp or pour over the rice. And to finally pair that off, my personal favorite, champagne. A lot of champagnes out there, Dom Perignon, Perrier Jouet. My personal favorite, Yellow Label, also known as Veuve Clicquot. Because a nice champagne going with a sweet dish like that is absolutely perfect. So that concludes the show for today. And let me tell you something. You may not agree with everything that I have to say, but what's important to me and all that matters to me is it gets you to talk and gets you to think. Because understanding only comes through communication, and reasonable minds have to prevail. So I look forward to you guys tuning in next week, where I'm going to be talking about tax reform for cannabis, why women put up with the bull crap that men do, immigration, and another dish that's going to knock your socks off, and that's going to be Dover sole. Thanks a lot for listening. It's been my absolute pleasure. Tune in next week.
You've been listening to The Voice of Reason, hosted by Mr. Ted Durden. The Voice of Reason is produced and directed by Appel & Associates and is part of the WordCompMatters.org podcast channel. All opinions expressed on The Voice of Reason are the sole opinions of Mr. Ted Durden and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of his advertisers or the WordComp Matters channel. For The Voice of Reason, my name is Steve Appel.